dreckiges Lachen vergeht, wenn ihr euer eigenes Blut fließen seht. Die Waffengemeinschaft Germaniens steht, für einen Kommen ist es jetzt zu spät.
I've got one that can see.
Where there's thunder, there's lightning. John Nada. I'll just come right out and say it. The culture is not your friend. Society is not your friend. And the fact of the matter is that the culture will never be honest with you about that. And it's become apparent to me over the years, we just had the Super Bowl a couple days ago, and I didn't watch it for a number of reasons, one of which was because I was traveling at the time, but I wouldn't have watched it anyway. And I think there were somebody mentioned an Audi commercial to me that was very gynocentric. But again, a lot of the reason why I don't, this happened, about a year or two ago, and I've never been big into football, never been big into NFL. Pretty big, Netherlands, the Netherlands team, KNVB. But I've watched football off and on. I was more of a fan when I was younger, and the Tennessee Titans were doing good. But anymore, it has become this very anti-male conglomeration, and sports in general seem to be heading in that direction, if not already basically being there, because not because they really care about women, and not because they really buy into it, but because corporations and businesses are starting to see how gynocentric the society really is, and the fact that there are more men than women, or excuse me, rather there's more women than men, and that women oftentimes are courted for their advertising dollar because they do tend to spend more money on buying shit that they don't need. And so there's an ad revenue right there with which that they can tap into. And so, the whole breast cancer awareness thing, as if breast cancer was the only type of cancer, and of course, it would have to be the only type of cancer because it seems to primarily affect women more. And obviously this is a scheme by the patriarchy to hold women down and oppress women. But of course, we know that there, is innumerable amounts of types of cancer, but it's only ever seemed to be focused upon or looked at when it is a woman's issue. And so, with the NFL and many other sports, entities, they have gone to this, wearing of the pink and everything else. In fact, it's like they do more for that than they even do for the veterans. Every once in a while, they'll have a game or whatever where they'll wear some type of camouflage accoutrement to their uniform. But it's just constantly every year shoved down our throats. And then of course the commercials that go along with that, we kind of mentioned that, and just the overall, I don't know, it's what I call the phenomenon of the obnoxious female sports fan. She wears the jersey and she knows just enough about the team and the sport to appear knowledgeable, but really it's nothing but it's a chameleon move. It's a shape-shifting move in order to appear as if she's hip with it. She's one of the guys. She's the girl that it's an attention whoring thing when you really get down to it. And I've seen that a lot, not only with NFL but with UFC as of late, especially when Ronda Rousey was making the rounds and was this big. And I never bought into her hype. This idea that she could beat Floyd Mayweather, or she could beat Tank Abbott, or beat any genetic male. She refused to fight Fallon Fox, the so-called transgendered fighter in the UFC. And then it wasn't long after that when she began fighting, she was a one-trick pony. When she began fighting opponents that had a little bit more in their repertoire, it wasn't long before people figured out how to beat Rousey. And it's just kind of funny because when she was on top and everything, she ran her mouth and everybody loved her. Just no humility whatsoever. That's a lot of why I'm not a big UFC fan to begin with. Is in the traditional martial arts, you have this humility and this, there's a level of pride, but it's a tempered kind of pride. It's a self discipline. And the UFC anymore has become this almost like it's trying to be sports entertainment rather than just being a combat sport. And so she made her rounds and ran her mouth and all this, and everybody around her, of course, was pumping her ego up. And then she loses to Holly Holm, and she wants to kill herself like it's the end of the world. Like, I mean, how many men have suffered through so much worse? Men coming back from the war zones of PTSD and people dealing with being born with paralysis or people becoming paralyzed. Um, I think of somebody like Christopher Reeves or somebody like a Stephen Hawking, and yet she loses a fight, and it bruises her ego because she had all these yes men and yes women around her saying she was the greatest and building her up. She loses a fight and she wants to kill herself. I mean, just no resiliency whatsoever. And then they built up oh, she's going to come back, and and again, the jig was up, and everybody knew how to beat her. But going back to the shape shifting thing, uh, I it's like I've noticed ex girlfriends, uh, interest they never had when we dated. All of a sudden, they get with somebody new, and let's say that guy's um, you know, a football fan or a baseball fan, and I don't know, maybe they like the Philadelphia Eagles or the Phillies or somebody, and all of a sudden they're a Phillies fan, or all of a sudden they're an Eagles fan when they never were before. I mean, they never mentioned, and it just goes to show you that whoever they're with, they shapeshift and morph into whatever it is they think that guy wants, or whatever it is that guy's into, and that's because most women have no real interest or hobbies of their own. And I don't mean that as obviously there are some. I mean, there's exceptions to every rule, but the majority of the ones that I've met, they you know, what are their interests? They like to sleep. They're into makeup. They like to eat. These are not interests. These are like, have you ever seen on a dating site interest eating and sleeping? Well, these aren't interests. These are things you must do in order to sustain life and survive. And it's been very rare that I've met anybody or females that have really had any real hobbies. Being into celebrity gossip is not a hobby, in my opinion. The thing, like hobby wise, I enjoy, the flint napping thing and trying to replicate some of these survival skills and things like that, as well as, hiking and camping. And I was and still am to a degree into, doing the kind of World War II, the little World War II miniatures. You paint them and maybe put them in a little diorama scene. And it's been very rare that I've met any women that had any hobbies that required any kind of like skill or introspection or being knowledgeable, about the hobby or whatever. It's always these ready-made activities. And that kind of ties into another thing is the concern, like I said earlier, that the culture is not your friend. And this overall concern with female happiness, as long as the women are happy, happy wife, happy life, and all that bullshit. And again, I've noticed it again with relationships that I've been in, or ex girlfriends, or like I said, girls that I had dated at the time. That the only thing that really seemed to matter was their happiness, whether or not they were getting enough attention, whether or not I was doing X, Y, or Z for them. But it was never really, a concern. It was never really anything that cared to, concern themselves with as to whether or not I was happy. And, I see it a lot with, like I said, girls I've dated where they're in a new relationship, but the guy has to be miserable because I know I was when I dated these people. And it's just all about what he does for her and how he makes her happy. And of course, the society at large is like that. We pass laws and legislation and gear entertainment and pretty much everything towards what is going to make women happy. Hence the gynocracy, hence the gynocentrism. And they'll never be honest about it. The society will never be honest about their hatred for you. They hate you. Toxic masculinity, all this BS. Everything is about keeping you in line. Everything is about keeping you from reaching your full potential as a man. Everything's about keeping you from realizing what makes a man. Everything's about keeping you from having a self-realization. Because once you self-realize, once you figure it out, once you understand the game, you no longer want to play it, and so therefore you drop out, and economically that's a disaster for them, and then they don't have the henchmen to do their bidding. Once you figure it out, once you see that the game is rigged, it's like a game of Nazi zombies. I mean, you're never going to win. It's just round after round after round, and the harder you fight, the more zombies they send after you. Once you figure all that out and you start living for yourself and doing what is beneficial for you and what makes you happy, then they've got an issue, in the system. There's a glitch in the matrix. Turning my attention now, like I said, there's been a lot of prominent Mgtow content contributors that have, basically there's been this accusation that a lot of people are coming to Mgtow because they can't get laid or they can't get a girlfriend. And here's the fact of the matter. The people that are coming to Mgtow and using it as a crutch or using it as a security blanket for those reasons will be quickly found out. And we don't even have to even say anything to these people or run them off or whatever the case may be, because the fact of the matter is that if somebody comes to Mgtow under false pretense, they're not going to last long. They're not going to hang in there long, and they're going to quickly remove themselves. The minute that they get some female validation or attention, they're going to immediately go back on everything that they said they thought and believed. And so we don't really have to worry about people coming to Mgtow under false pretense, because, like I said, they're going to remove themselves from it. The minute that it's no longer working for them, or the minute that they're, that they get a girlfriend or whatever, they're gonna remove themselves from Mgtow. The other falseness, and I've spoke about this before. I've had girlfriends as a Mgtow, while being a Mgtow. In fact, I've probably had more success with women as a Mgtow. Simply because, when you come to a place where you no longer care, that's very attractive to a lot of women. But the thing is that, I don't really believe in the Mgtow levels, Mgtow monk, Mgtow. No, Mgtow is men going their own way, whatever way that is. So if you want to date, that's fine. If you feel like that, it's whatever reward you get out of that is not worth the trouble, that's also fine. Because this is not a movement. This movement only has the precepts. This is not a movement. It's only that, basically what binds us all together here is that we all agree on the precepts that don't get married, don't cohabitate, don't have children. Those are all basically the basic tenets of what Mgtow is. And from there, it's whatever. That would be like saying all Mgtow had to be a Christian, or all Mgtow had to be a Muslim, or all Mgtow had to be Republican or Democrat. It's men going our own way. So we're all doing our own thing, and we all have our own beliefs about a lot of different subjects. But the tie that binds, of course, is the fact that we figured the reality out that women will never love us, and that we must stand on our own 2 feet, or we must cultivate in ourselves a self-reliance and a strong inner self, and that ultimately the things we were told from the time we were young until now have all been a lie from the society. And it's not good and it's not evil. It just is. And so we just happen to be the ones that have seen the light. We happen to be the ones that have accepted the enlightenment, because you can be enlightened and not accept it. And now it's up to us what direction we go. I am John Nada. This has been the Days of Thunder. And remember, you are free to do as you're told.